American dream is doing what you love and making millions. And going for your dream is always going to be a battle of guts and willpower. You got to say, how much do I want it? My first guest is a great example. It's a story you don't hear every day here on The Big Idea. This guy dreamed of being a pro wrestler as a kid. He was laughed at. He was held at gunpoint. His mom was paralyzed while he was going after his dream, but he kept going. And he's going to get you inspired to go after your dream no matter what happens. Chris Jericho, professional wrestler and author of A Lion's Tale. Welcome to The Big Idea. How are you, man?
Good, man. We should be a pair of motivational speakers here. I can already feel the fire, feel the love. Let's go, let's go.
Well, you're here to motivate because obviously most of our viewers are not planning on being wrestlers, don't have the skills, but your story is relevant in that you had a dream as a kid and you had all kinds of obstacles thrown your way, but you kept going. I want to pick it up. You and Grandma are 7 years old. You're 7 years old watching wrestling with Grandma.
Yeah, by proxy, I was forced to watch wrestling because at 5 o'clock was the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner hour. At 6 o'clock was wrestling. At 7 o'clock was hockey night in Canada. When you grow up in Winnipeg, you got to watch hockey. Bugs Bunny is part of every kid's life, so wrestling was in between. You had to watch it. There's only 3 channels, 1 TV in the house. Grandma had the call, so we watched wrestling. And right off the bat, I got
So were you
interested.
watching like Bruno Sammartino and Pedro Morales? So that was a little before your time.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Canada. It was more Jesse the Body Ventura, Hulk Hogan from when they were wrestling in Minnesota area.
You're younger than me. What the hell am I talking?
I'm about a couple decades, probably.
So, but in high school, you were like obsessed with this thing.
I decided when I was about 12 that this is what I wanted to do, being a small town kid and being a fairly small guy at the time. But still, to me, there was no obstacles. It was about wrestling. I met another guy who enjoyed wrestling, so we formed our own wrestling company called the BTWF, the Big Time Wrestling Federation. We would tell our high school gym teacher, that we were going to do gymnastics in the back room. We'd take the big porta pits and just have our card of wrestlers. He'd play 10 guys, I would play 10 guys, basically pretty much raving psychos, raging schizophrenics, go in there and play all these different characters, but learning about wrestling and practicing the moves and just getting this fire and this passion for it that from a very young age there was blinders on. This is what I have to do because it's what really motivates me and I have this passion for it.
You figured out early what some people never figured out, hopefully they figured out, is no matter what, and I always say this to people, you know, if you love music, that's your passion, make a business out of it. You know, you were lucky enough or naive enough, a little bit of both, to say, no, I love wrestling even though I'm not. How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
On a good day.
Yeah, Okay,
right. I say I'm 5'11" also. Okay, so let's leave it at that. And basically, and all along, people must have been telling you, you're too small, you can't be a wrestler.
Well, especially back in those days when I first started wrestling, it was 1990. It was all about the 6'8", 300-pound type of guys. But that never bothered me. I mean, people would laugh, literally laugh. I stood in my church as my minister said he's going off to become a wrestler, and he might as well have thought he said I was going off to be a sword swallower or a mime. People were like, not out of maliciousness, but just like, you got to be kidding me. And it really struck me like, screw these guys. Because to me, size, big deal. I'm still going to do this. So early on, I had to figure out a way, how am I going to go outside the box and do this? I have to start thinking, I'm never going to be this tall, but I can have a personality that's the biggest on the show.
So how did you go outside the box?
Well, basically what I started doing was just working on my character, my charisma, my personality. How do you connect with the crowd? For any type of show business, you have to make people want to get into what you're doing, make them want to buy a ticket to come and see you. Then I was very fortunate to get these gigs outside of the United States, outside of Canada, in Mexico, in Japan, in Germany, where it wasn't so much about the size, it was about the athleticism and about the character and the personality and connecting with the crowd. So this is kind of how I had to start working my way through the ranks overseas, outside of my own comfort zone.
Yeah. You also had a gut check moment. You were 19 years old and your life changed.
Yeah, I was 19. I had just left Winnipeg to move to Calgary to go to wrestling school. And right when I graduated from wrestling school, my first match was booked at the Ponoka Moose Hall in Alberta. And I got a call that my mom had suffered a serious accident, and she was actually was a quadriplegic. And I went home and saw her in the hospital. When I had left my house in Winnipeg, I saw her standing on the sunny day on the driveway, waving goodbye. The next time I saw her was in a hospital ICU unit, completely quadriplegic, paralyzed, with the halo on, the screws screwed in. I still remember seeing the plasma coming out of her head, not blood, but plasma. And just thinking, like, this is it. I'm moving back to Winnipeg, and I'm giving up this dream. Like, this is just it's a pipe dream. It's never going to work anyways. The first thing she said when she was well enough to talk was, you are not giving up. You have this dream, and I forbid you to give up. Wow. And as soon as she said that, she had this iron will to be able to survive this horrible accident and become a human being again. And just this will was kind of imparted into me like a spirit, like, you cannot give up now. This is your destiny, and you have to do your mother proud. and she's going to be living vicariously through me. Now it's my job to take that to the next level.
So you're a guy who obviously was very driven to begin with, but you add that on, and there was nothing stopping.
That, like I said, the blinders there, but this was like there was no option of quitting. That was not something I would have ever even thought about, because are you kidding me? There's no way.
Now, you mentioned Mexico and Japan. You know, this world of wrestling is not always glamorous. You had a little run-in with the Yakuza in Japan, which is the Japanese mob?
Yeah, I actually I had a flower pot on the street that I decided to try and catch for some reason and smashed it on the ground by mistake. And the Yakuza literally pulled up wearing these Cosby Kids shirts, as I call them. They're like these wild sweaters that Bill Cosby used to wear on the show. And they basically told me that, you know, you broke this vase, it's our vase, you will clean up the vase, you will pay us the money for it, or we'll cut your finger off. And I knew that they weren't kidding around.
And no wrestling moves for that,
There
really.
was no wrestling moves for that, yeah. When the two guys, men in black with the Cosby Kids shirts on, it was scared, you know. Between that and being held up at gunpoint at the side of the road in Mexico when I took a girl who's supposed to be taking me to a party. She took me to the side of the outskirts of Mexico City with her brother. They held me up at gunpoint and took my money and left me on the side of the road. And I staring down this barrel of a gun where you can actually see the intertwining, like the little notches, like at the beginning of a James Bond movie. Like when you have this stuck in your face in the middle of nowhere, a foreigner, no one knows where I am, I can't speak Spanish. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. But as soon as they drove away, well, I got to follow the lights in the sky. I'll start walking back to Mexico City. I got a match tomorrow night. Just another thing to put into the memory banks, take the negative, turn it into a positive, and continue to forge on to get this goal, which was to finally make it into Vince McMahon's WWE. That was all I was thinking about through all of these trials and tribulations.
So how'd you crack? I love Vince and Linda. They've got a great organization. How'd you finally crack it?
Well, I mean, like I said, I spent a lot of this time overseas, not just for wrestling experience, but getting life experience and getting all these different colors that I could paint with, so that by the time I finally had my chance to go to the WWE, because I had built up this international following, still wasn't getting any calls from anybody in the States, so I would just continue to forge on. When I finally got my shot to go to the WWE, I was ready. I wasn't the biggest guy, but once again, I had one of the biggest personalities because I had all this experience and all these things I could take and use to my advantage. And that's what I wanted to write this book. It's a very unique story, not so much about wrestling. It's more about follow your dream, stranger in a strange land, coming of age story with wrestling as a backdrop. This could just as easily be about a blacksmith or about a florist, but this is just my goal, my dream. How did I go out and do that? And I did.
Well, you're a great story. Anybody ever tell you look like my buddy John Bon Jovi? You get that at all?
It's funny. I just had that this morning, and I had another guy tell me I look like Ricky Martin. So which one is it?
I would stick with the John Bon Jovi.
No,
trust me. If I have to listen to one more girl talk about how gorgeous he is, please, I can't take it anymore. I love the guy, but it's getting to me. Chris Jericho, professional wrestler. Great book. Go get it. Great lessons in that book. Like he said, whether you're a blacksmith, whether you open up an insurance company, this guy will tell you how to get there. More Big Idea.